Being wholesome, smart, charming, and so happy that people constantly compare you to the sun sounds like the exact opposite of how a Hollywood movie star ought to be. But in Sissy Spacek's case, it's all true. She has been one of the most magnetic performers of the last 5 decades, and has been a darling of Hollywood despite spending 3/4 of her career living on a farm in the middle of nowhere. So how did she develop this incredible strength of character? The truth is that it was born from an almost unbearable tragedy. Welcome to Hollywood Mysteries. Mary Elizabeth Spacek, better known to most of us as Sissy, was a natural performer from the time she was a kid. Born on Christmas Day in 1949, her upbringing was warm and nurturing. Sissy's parents were Virginia Frances, née Spillman, and Edwin Arnold Spacek Sr. Her father worked as an agricultural agent in Quitman, a small town in Wood County, Texas. Edwin's heritage was predominantly Czech. His parents, Mary and Arnold A. Spacek, were important figures in their local community, with Arnold even serving as a mayor of Granger, Texas. Though the family's last name was originally pronounced Spacek, it pretty soon became Spacek in America, or in Sissy's case, Space Chick at high school. She had another interesting figure in her family tree. Actor Rip Torn was her first cousin. Torn's mother, Thelma, was the older sister of Sissy's father. On her mother's side, Sissy's ancestry was primarily English and Irish, with her mother being born in Texas's Rio Grande Valley. Sissy's first performance came at the age of 6 during a local talent show. By 9, she and her brother Robbie had become a well-known duo, performing Charleston dances and banjo tunes for their neighbors in Quitman. In fact, it was Robbie who gave her nickname Sissy, as in sister, and it stuck. During her early teenage years, Sissy saved enough money from babysitting to buy a 12-string guitar, and this was the first major step on her path to realizing her childhood dream. Not to become an actor, but a pop star. She was often scolded for her antics, like the time a neighbor told her mother, "Mrs. Spacek, did you know your daughter has been riding our cows again?" She also got engaged to her high school boyfriend, which caused a minor scandal. However, a couple of weeks later, when her football-playing boyfriend wanted his ring back, she made him cut it off her finger. These moments, she later reflected, made me what I am today. I felt really cradled by Quitman. I felt like my whole life was headed in a single direction. Everything was always going to happen in a certain way. I was going to go to the University of Texas at Austin, like my brother Robbie, get involved with music and maybe be a female Buddy Holly. Then I intended to come back to Quitman. 200 miles away was worldly enough for me. Then something happened to blow the air out of everything. That something was devastating. Robbie, her beloved brother, was diagnosed with acute leukemia. Forced to leave university due to his illness, he came back home to Quitman, where his condition steadily worsened. Around this time, Sissy became runner-up in the region's biggest beauty and talent competition, the Dogwood Fiesta pageant. Wearing a space-age dress she had designed herself, and performing 2 original songs, she blew the judges away. One of the judges, a journalist from Longview, was so impressed that she encouraged Sissy to go to New York City and become a star. At just 17, Sissy asked her parents for permission to visit her cousin Rip and his wife, actress Geraldine Page, in Manhattan. Her father, Ed, decided the next morning that the trip would be good for her, as it might be a reprieve from the emotional weight of Robbie's illness. That summer of 1967, young Sissy Spacek arrived in Manhattan, with her guitar always by her side. She had a clear idea of the image she wanted to portray, and she looked to swinging London for her style. Borrowing from the mod girls and the Twiggy-inspired look of the era, she fit right into New York's exciting, free and expressive young art scene at the time. She was also amazed by the variety and freedom of life in New York, not least the kinds of people she could mix with. She said, "Geraldine was in a play at the time, and I'd go every day. I was friends with a hairdresser. Later, he committed suicide. He was a male prostitute, so pure. I remember just being exposed to all kinds of amazing people. I was never frightened. I didn't know who anybody was anyway. I could talk to him. I was a blank page." One story from her time in New York involved Rip and Geraldine taking her to meet writer Terry Southern, who was working on the Candy screenplay around then. Sissy recalled pulling out her guitar and singing a song she had written. The lyrics included the line, "I feel his soft touch while I'm sleeping." She explained, "Well, I meant kind of, dreaming or something. It was a non-sexual lyric, to me." Southern interrupted her mid-song to ask if she was a virgin. I was just aghast. "You didn't talk about politics, religion, or money where I was brought up, and I was sure you didn't talk about sex." I was dumbfounded, and I assured him that I was. Southern wanted to know how she could write such a line if she was a virgin. Geraldine, who had seemingly been asleep on the couch after her performance that night, suddenly sat up and cut in, saying, "Terry, you don't have to stomp grapes to know what wine tastes like." If it was a dream to be 17 and free in New York City in 1967, there was still a nightmare hanging over Sissy's life that occupied her thoughts at every spare moment. During her stay, Sissy received a heartbreaking letter from Robbie. It began, "Dear Sissy, how's my little sister doing? The treatment still hasn't worked, so they're just waiting to see what is happening on that problem too. They'll have to give me another treatment, and I'm kind of scared because it hasn't worked. And I want to get out of the hospital and come and see you, Sissy. I really miss you, and I'm worried about my counts." The letter went on to describe his loneliness. "I haven't seen anybody, just hospital people, since you've left, and that's been a long time. I want to get out of this place. It's terrible. I feel like I will never get out to do anything like you are doing. Just stay with Mother and Dad probably for the rest of my life. How long that is, probably not long. I just hope that you and Ed don't get anything wrong like me and have to ruin your whole life. I don't know what I'm going to do, Sissy. I can't be with Mother and Dad all my life. I'm so much of a problem now that I have leukemia, and I just hope that I'll be cured someday. That's all I wanted in life, is to be healthy, nothing else. Love, Rob. Write me every day, really, Sissy, please." True to his request, Sissy wrote to him daily, though she wrestled with guilt for being far from home. According to her, Robbie never dwelled on his own suffering. He was instead only concerned with the burden his illness placed on their family. Sissy returned to Quitman after the school year had already begun. She remembered that, quote, "Everything had changed. I'd missed majorette practice. I didn't get to be a head majorette. You always build up to your senior year. It's supposed to be a big deal. Well, it just wasn't a big deal." Early the next year, Robbie passed away at just 18 years old. The loss devastated her. She'd lost her brother, her co-performer, and her best friend at a stroke. "It changed everything. What you were supposed to do was not as important as the things you felt you should do," she said. She called it the defining event of my whole life. On the other hand, to lose something so precious at that age made her fearless. "I think it made me brave. Once you experience something like that, you've experienced the ultimate tragedy," she explained. "If you can continue, nothing else frightens you. Maybe it gave more depth to my work because I had already experienced something profound and life-changing." At the time, she already had a room secured at the University of Texas, along with a spot in a Rush sorority and a full slate of classes. Forfeiting those plans cost her $200, but she returned to New York the following summer with a new plan. Her cousin Rip arranged a meeting for her with the William Morris Agency, but the agents politely suggested she come back in a few years. A demo she recorded with Eddie Simon, Paul Simon's brother, also failed to gain any traction. She auditioned for The Tonight Show, but a hoarse voice on the day derailed her chances there too. Even Bob LeMond, a manager who later built John Travolta's career, dismissed her, saying she should drop the accent and go home. Ironically, years later, she would star alongside Travolta and Carrie. Despite these early setbacks, Sissy pressed on. She auditioned for Decca Records, but they ultimately decided she was too similar to another artist on their roster, Loretta Lynn. Spacek did manage to record a single under the name Rainbow for Roulette Records. The folk song titled, "John, You've Gone Too Far This Time," scolded John Lennon for posing nude with Yoko Ono on the cover of Two Virgins. Needless to say, it wasn't a hit. Eventually, she began to think more about acting. She enrolled at the Lee Strasberg Theatrical Institute and spent 8 months immersed in method acting. The method really spoke to her, just as it had done to a whole generation of brilliant actors who preceded her. Anything you can use to understand the character and his motivations, and to become the character, you should use, she said. I'm not above even poking my eye to help me cry, but the best method for me is to become a blank page. I'll just wear light-colored clothes, fast, go hiking, do research, and one day I'll be the character. Her favorite character study came after class. During walks with a friend through Manhattan, we'd walk to 14th, cut across 17th and Park, then go up to Max's Kansas City. It was always crowded, always full of the greatest characters I had ever seen. I felt like a beatnik. It was wonderful. In New York's underground scene, Sissy fit right in. I was anonymous. All my life, you see, I've been able to be in all these outrageous situations, and I've been neutral. It's probably been my greatest asset. She became friends with Holly Woodlawn, the actress and model, and in 1970, she appeared as an extra in Andy Warhol's Trash. Years later, when Warhol photographed her for the cover of Interview magazine, after the release of 3 Women, she thanked him for that early break. Her first real acting role came the following year, as a naive victim of white slavery in Prime Cut. The film, which starred Lee Marvin and Gene Hackman, was shot in Canada. Sissy later joked, I was the only one in the cast who believed the script. White slavery? You bet. I believed Lee Marvin would have picked me. On the set of Prime Cut, Sissy's bright and happy personality caught the eye of her colleagues. A crew member described her as so goddamn sunny she made you want to put on sunglasses. When asked about her reputation for being cheerful, Sissy said, It never bothered me. I am the way I am. I don't try to exploit my accent or the way I am. I'm just compulsive about making other people feel comfortable. I believe ultimately that it's a better working situation if people are happy. New York City began to lose its appeal for Sissy, just as her role in Prime Cut gave her the visibility to secure more work. She headed to Los Angeles to audition for Electra Glide in Blue. Though she didn't land the role, she decided to stay. Reflecting on her arrival, she said, I knew 2 people in LA, and I called them both from my hotel room. One came over and said, Glad to have you here, and left. The other, a girlfriend from Prime Cut, came and got me. She'd found a great house in Beechwood Canyon, and we pooled our money. We were living in the lap of luxury. Spacek's television debut came in 1973 on the romantic comedy anthology Love, American Style. That same year, she co-starred in the TV movie The Girls of Huntington House and made her first appearance as Sarah Jane Simmons in the family drama The Waltons. She was carving out what could have been a solid career as an actor, but there was a huge untapped potential resting within her. And under the stewardship of a brilliant director, Sissy had what it takes to become one of the elite actors in Hollywood history, and she was about to be given that chance. She was sent to interview writer-director Terrence Malick. She vividly remembered his rented Spanish-style home, down to the kefir drinks his wife served. From the moment we met, it was neat, she recalled. We talked about Terry's script, and I was just fascinated. For hours, I forgot my girlfriend was waiting for me out in the car. That meeting led to Badlands, a project Spacek and many others considered one of her finest roles. The film was inspired by the late 1950s killing spree of Charles Starkweather, who murdered his girlfriend's father before the pair embarked on a multi-state crime spree. Starkweather was eventually executed, and his girlfriend was jailed. Badlands tells the story of Kit, played by Martin Sheen, a rebellious garbage collector who falls for Spacek's character, Holly, a shy baton twirler. Kit murders Holly's father and the 2 run away together, living out a twisted version of their dream. Yet, as fugitives, they discover they don't have much to say to each other. The film didn't feature any major stars, had minimal dialogue and Malick's sparse, beautiful style. Back then, Hollywood audiences were hungry for depth and quality in cinema, and Malick had both of these traits in abundance. Unfortunately, Warner Brothers, who had bought the film for $1 million, decided it was time for one of their classic harebrained moments when it comes to distribution, by pairing Badlands with the Mel Brooks comedy Blazing Saddles. After watching the hilarious but undoubtedly silly Blazing Saddles, audiences reacted extremely negatively to the controversial and thoughtful Badlands. so Warner decided to can the film. However, those who saw it were unanimous in their praise of Spacek's luminous performance. It was a hit in Britain, and in the small number of theaters it was released in the US, mostly funded by the production company in an effort to prove it could make money. It also blew away everyone at that year's New York Film Festival, even leaving Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets in the shade. Vincent Canby wrote, "Sheen and Miss Spacek are splendid as the self-absorbed, cruel, possibly psychotic children of our time, as are the members of the supporting cast, including Warren Oates as Holly's father. One may legitimately debate the validity of Malick's vision, but not, I think, his immense talent. Badlands is a most important and exciting film." Reflecting on her experience, Spacek credited Malick with having a transformative impact on her. "Terry Malick gave me respect," she said. "That reinforced everything for me. He allowed me to grow an enormous amount. His words, they feel so good to say. Every frame is a painting with Terry. We all worked so long on the characters that when we finally saw the film, it was like, oh gosh, Kit and Holly will never exist again." There's no doubt Sissy had a great time on the set of Badlands, but she might have been the only one. The production was notoriously fraught with violence, fires, madness, and borderline torture in 100-degree heat. If you're curious to hear more about the nightmare that was the Badlands shoot, and how the usually mild-mannered Malick found himself brawling, then head over to our Patreon or YouTube members area where our recent Hollywood Histories essay has the full scoop. Badlands didn't only transform her career and make her a star, it also transformed her private life. It says a lot about Sissy that while many young actresses and actors might find their moment of breakthrough fame as one which begins to send their personal life spiraling out of their control, Sissy found the perfect opportunity to meet the love of her life and find even greater happiness. She met Jack Fisk, the film set designer on the movie. Fisk later said they connected instantly because, quote, "We had the same kind of conviction to work." Fisk had learned about the project from a friend who was working as the production manager. Even before meeting Malick, Fisk immersed himself in research about the time period. 2 years after meeting, Spacek and Fisk were married. Fisk, an accomplished and respected artist, allowed the couple to maintain a level of selectivity in their projects. After Badlands, they often worked together, and they built up a close-knit team of trusted crew and collaborators. "You could wait another lifetime for a role as good as yours in Badlands," Shirley Jones once told Spacek. "For a while it seemed she might have to." After 1973, roles were sparse, and Spacek chose carefully. Among her few projects was the TV movie Catherine, directed by Jeremy Paul Kagan. The story followed a privileged college student turned radical, with Sissy starring alongside an up-and-coming Henry Winkler. "I took a few television jobs," Spacek admitted, "things I'd forget until someone called and said, 'I'm watching you on The Rookies, and can't believe what you just did.'" In 1976, she played Linda Murray, a maid in Alan Rudolph's Welcome to L.A. To prepare, she spent time observing housekeepers in Los Angeles. Her portrayal was inspired by 2 women she met who cleaned homes in bikinis. Spacek's performance caught the attention of Robert Altman, who was Rudolph's mentor. Meanwhile, Jack Fisk joined the production team for Brian De Palma's Carrie as art director. "Brian called one day and told me to get the book and read it," Spacek remembered, "so I went out and got it, and I was just horrified. But I knew his sense of humor, and I was eager to work on it." De Palma had Spacek in mind for the role of Chris, the antagonist who was ultimately played by Nancy Allen. When Spacek prepared to leave for New York to film a commercial, De Palma called again. He offered her the chance to audition for the lead role of Carrie White, but downplayed her chances, saying another actress had already impressed him. She decided to take the shot all the same. For the audition, Spacek chose a worn navy sailor dress from her childhood that her mother had forced her to wear, much to her chagrin at the time. She slicked her hair back with Vaseline and channeled a girl from her high school who had suffered relentless bullying. She was beautiful, Spacek explained, but she was poor and couldn't afford clothes. She wore antiques, and the kids were really brutal with her. I loved her clothes, baggy and old-fashioned as they were. She was barefoot most of the time, but it wasn't cool back then. In the end, it's the outsiders you end up emulating. After the screen test, Spacek waited in the parking lot while Fisk reviewed the footage with the production team. When he returned, he leapt into the car, shouting, "You got it!" Spacek recalled, "We sped off before anyone could change their mind." Fisk later spoke about what set Spacek apart. The other girl played Carrie as someone you could hate. You could understand why everyone made fun of her, and you didn't really care about her. Sissy made you feel hope for Carrie White. You could almost fall in love with her, and that made the film twice as effective. De Palma said there was no contest. For the record, the other girl was Carrie Fisher. Curiously enough, De Palma was holding a joint audition for Carrie, along with another upcoming filmmaker who was making a sci-fi movie. Spacek also managed to squeeze in an audition for that film too, but this time the part went to Carrie Fisher. The other role was, of course, Princess Leia in Star Wars. Carrie was a breakthrough hit that became a cultural icon, and is still hugely influential today. Sissy was now seen as a powerhouse performer who could transform a film into something truly unique and special. In the film, she portrays Carrie White, a shy high school girl tormented by her classmates and dominated by her mother, Margaret, played by Piper Laurie. Margaret's extreme religious fervor and obsession with purity stem from her own past, a seduction and abandonment by Carrie's father years earlier that left her consumed by shame and fear. While often categorized as a horror movie, Carrie resonates as much as a poignant tale of a lonely and ostracized teenager. Spacek felt this, saying, "So many kids feel tortured when they're in middle school and high school, bullied and misunderstood." Stephen King hit a nerve with that. It's a universal story. The film's opening locker room scene has been criticized in more recent years for its tone, which make more prudish modern audiences wince, with some finding it tasteless by today's politically cautious standards. But the odd sensuality of the sequence, a total contrast with Carrie's innocence, is really an example of De Palma's signature style. By juxtaposing overt sexuality with the grim violence, innocence and the supernatural retribution that follows, De Palma creates an almost operatic sense of foreboding. The story draws on classical influences from Greek and Roman tragedy, where themes of sex, vengeance, and power intertwine, particularly through the lens of a woman gifted with extraordinary abilities. Critics love Spacek's performance. Pauline Kael of The New Yorker described her portrayal as transformative. Sissy Spacek uses her freckled pallor and whitish eyelashes to suggest a squashed, groggy girl who could go in any direction. At times she seems unborn, a fetus. I don't see how this performance could be any better. She's touching like Elizabeth Hartman in one of her victim roles, but she's also unearthly, a changeling. After Carrie, Sissy continued to build her reputation in independent cinema. A year later, she gave another haunting performance as Pinky Rose in Robert Altman's dreamlike masterpiece, 3 Women. Spacek's distinct appearance set her apart from the typical Hollywood starlet. Her fiery red hair, freckles, petite frame, and childlike demeanor made her a unique presence on screen. She could appear untamed in one moment and serenely beautiful in the next. Badlands had taught her that subtlety and making use of her big blue eyes were far more valuable than dialogue. This was precisely what Altman sought when he cast her alongside the equally unconventional Shelley Duvall and Janice Rule. Altman himself was no ordinary filmmaker. Before his breakout into mainstream cinema, he had served as a bomber pilot in Southeast Asia during World War II, worked on industrial films, and dabbled in television. His career changed in 1970 when he directed MASH, an anti-war satire set in the Korean War Field Hospital, but unmistakably addressing the Vietnam War and the fractured state of America at that time. 3 Women, however, is enigmatic and visually exquisite. The story revolves around, in fact, 2 women, Spacek's timid, childlike Pinky Rose, and Shelley Duvall's self-assured, trend-obsessed Millie. They work as unskilled physiotherapists at a bleak geriatric center near Los Angeles. The pair share an unremarkable room at a 2-story motel called the Purple Sage, which has a shimmering pool. Despite both women being from Texas, they couldn't be more different. Pinky admires Millie's confidence, telling her with complete sincerity, "You are the most perfect person I ever met." Meanwhile, Millie is oblivious to how others perceive her. She sees herself as poised and fashionable, but in reality, her egotism and incessant chatter alienate everyone around her. The 3rd woman in the story is Willie, played by Janice Rule. Silent and heavily pregnant, Willie paints eerie murals on the walls of the motel pool and an abandoned swimming pool at Dodge City, a run-down roadside bar and motorcycle track that she owns with her brash, hard-drinking husband, Edgar. Edgar claims to have worked as a stunt double in the life and legend of Wyatt Earp and spends most of his time preening and drinking. Three Women defies simple categorization. Is it a dream, a series of interconnected dreams? Are the three women aspects of the same person? The film has a mood of dislocation and decay, with its setting symbolizing an America haunted by its past and uncertain of its future. Many critics have drawn comparisons between Three Women and the work of David Lynch, for its surrealism and unsettling beauty. Lynch's longtime collaborator is, of course, Jack Fisk, Sissy's husband, which only underscores this connection with Lynch. In fact, her link to Lynch runs even deeper as she helped fund his debut film, Eraserhead, and is thanked in the credits. Years later, she collaborated with him on The Straight Story, which was another feather in her independent cinema hat. The New York Times wrote, "In this film, Miss Spacek adds a new dimension of eeriness to the waif she played so effectively in Carrie." Altman himself was full of praise, saying, "She's remarkable, one of the top actresses I've ever worked with. Her resources are like a deep well." After Three Women, Sissy Spacek embarked on an extraordinary streak of performances, earning 5 Best Actress Oscar nominations between 1977 and 1986. Reflecting on that period, she said, "I went from one film to another, working with great directors. It was a wonderful time. The artist ruled in the 70s. We were making low-budget films that the studios didn't care about, so they'd leave us to our own devices." One of those nominations turned into a win with her portrayal of Loretta Lynn in 1980's Coal Miner's Daughter. Lynn personally chose Spacek for the role, a curious twist of fate given Spacek's earlier rejection by Decca Records for being too similar to Lynn as a musician. In the film, both Spacek and Beverly D'Angelo, who played Patsy Cline, performed their characters' vocals. Spacek's singing earned her a Grammy nomination for the soundtrack, and she later released her own country album, Hanging Up My Heart, in 1983. The album featured the hit single Lonely But Only For You, written by K.T. Oslin, which reached number 15 on the Billboard Country chart. That same year, Spacek starred as Carolyn Cassidy in Heartbeat, a film about her relationship with Jack Kerouac and Neil Cassidy. Determined to secure the role, Spacek immersed herself in over 4,000 pages of research. During a dinner with producer Ed Pressman and director John Byram, they informed her that she wasn't getting the part. Distraught, she accidentally shattered a wine glass in her hand. Pressman later told her that that moment convinced them she was after all perfect for the role. Released in April 1980, Heartbeat received mixed reviews, but Spacek's method-style dedication to the character became legendary. In 1982, she starred alongside Jack Lemmon and Costa Gavras' Missing, a political thriller based on the disappearance of writer Charles Horman during the 1973 Chilean coup d'etat. The film suggested that the U.S. government was complicit in Horman's death, which stirred up a whole hornet's nest of controversy. Then Secretary of State Alexander Haig even publicly denounced the film. Spacek played the missing man's wife, who teams up with his father, played by Lemmon, to uncover the truth. The film earned Oscar nominations for Best Picture, Screenplay, Actor for Lemmon, and brought Spacek her 3rd Best Actress nomination. Sissy and Jack eventually grew disillusioned with life in Los Angeles. She described their early days in the industry as exciting, but recognized how disconnected they had become. "We used to laugh, because whatever happened in the world we'd think, wow, that would make a good film. For me, it's important to live a real life. An actor once told me early on, don't be one of those people that walks down the street and people go, oh, there's an actor. You want to be a person. You want to have experiences that you can use in your work." The couple retreated to an 85-hectare farm in Virginia, where they raised their daughters, bred horses, and lived a quieter life. "It was all about kids and animals," Spacek said. "I wanted my children to grow up and have some freedom, and not have everybody say, oh, those are Sissy Spacek's kids. I wanted them to be able to grow up and make mistakes and have experiences, so it's been great for all of us." Her daughters, Shyler and Madison, seemingly inherited the creative spirit. My older daughter, Shyler, is a great singer, and my younger daughter, Madison, is a visual artist. I really sound like a mom now, don't I? Our daughters are doomed to the art life, I'm afraid. Sissy's career flourished in the mid-1980s with yet more brilliant performances. She starred alongside Mel Gibson in the rural drama The River in 1984, portrayed the title character in Mary the following year, and joined Diane Keaton and Jessica Lange in the darkly comedic Crimes of the Heart the year after that. These roles earned her 3 consecutive Best Actress Oscar nominations. While she didn't win an Academy Award for these films, her performance in Crimes of the Heart did earn her a Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy. Crimes of the Heart, based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning play, brought together 3 of the decade's most talented actresses. Jessica Lange portrayed the sultry, world-weary sibling, while Diane Keaton was a timid, spinster-like sister. Spacek took the role as the innocent, sweet-natured sister, who just so happened to be the one who pulled the trigger. Critics took notice, with the New York Film Critics Circle awarding her Best Actress, and her role earned her another Oscar nomination. Another highlight of the 80s was her role in Raggedy Man, directed by her husband Jack in 1981. Though not much remembered today, the film contains some of Spacek's best work. She played a divorced telephone operator navigating life in a small town, where her independence of mind ruffled some feathers among the locals. The film also happened to be the debut of the young Henry Thomas, who would go on to star in E.T., the Extraterrestrial. In 1986, Spacek took on one of her most emotionally taxing roles in Night Mother. She played a deeply troubled daughter grappling with suicidal thoughts, a character that demanded an intense and draining performance. Spacek has always sought to connect deeply with her characters, which sometimes took a toll on her. If I was in a film that called for a very intense emotional scene in the afternoon, I'd get to the set and be in that mood all morning. I'd carry that misery around with me all day, she explained. The experience led to valuable advice from Jack Lemmon, with whom she had worked on Missing. He said to me, you should ease up on yourself. It's either going to happen or it's not. So don't give everything over to the misery before you're even there. You'll wear yourself out. That was some of the best advice I ever got. Over time, she learned to trust her instincts more and stopped clinging to emotions off camera, realizing it was unsustainable. Sissy showed no sign of slowing up in the 1990s, and she was forming a loose collaboration with Jack Lemmon, who, by the way, we recently made a video on, linked on screen now and in the description. She starred with Lemmon in Oliver Stone's JFK, where she played Liz Garrison. Shortly after JFK, Spacek was offered the role of Thelma Dickinson in Thelma and Louise. However, she turned it down, saying she thought the script was boring. The part eventually went to Geena Davis, who earned an Oscar nomination for her performance. In 1995, Spacek appeared in The Grass Harp, an ensemble film based on Truman Capote's novella. She portrayed Verena Talbot, a domineering woman at odds with her small-town relatives. The movie reunited her with Jack Lemmon and Piper Laurie once again. Spacek credits much of her professional stability to working with trusted friends and her husband. This circle of collaborators shielded her from some of the darker aspects of Hollywood. When asked about her experience working with Harvey Weinstein on 1990's The Long Walk Home, a film about the Montgomery bus boycott, Spacek acknowledged she had been warned about him. I was already an established actor, so I was protected in that way, she explained. He did some things that I thought were very unsavory, but they weren't sexual. One such incident involved a project Spacek had championed. She had committed deeply to the role, even having prosthetics made to alter her gum line, only for Weinstein to pull the project from her and give it to someone else after another actor won an Oscar. I wrote him a letter because I was so shocked that he would lower himself to that, she recalled. I didn't want him to drop the project. I just wanted him to acknowledge he'd been a real turd. He could never look at me after that at any event we were at. In 1997, she showed up in Paul Schrader's Affliction, playing Margie Fogg, a waitress caught in a tense father-son psychodrama. The film reunited her with Nick Nolte, her co-star from Heartbeat, and earned Nolte an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. James Coburn also won Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal of Nolte's abusive father. Spacek rounded out the decade with memorable roles in The Straight Story and Blast from the Past. In David Lynch's The Straight Story, she played Rose Straight, the exasperated daughter of Alvin Straight, a determined elderly man who sets out on a 300-mile journey by lawnmower to reconcile with his estranged brother. Based on a true story, the film was a departure from Lynch's typical surreal style, focusing instead on heartfelt simplicity. Richard Farnsworth's performance as Alvin earned him an Oscar nomination, while Sissy brought warmth as his concerned but supportive daughter. Sissy Spacek entered the 2000s with a powerful and critically acclaimed performance in the Bedroom. She played Ruth Fowler, a grieving mother consumed by anger and sorrow after the murder of her son by his lover's estranged husband. Stephen Holden of the New York Times described her performance as devastating, yet restrained, noting that with the slight tightening of her neck muscles and a downward twitch of her mouth, she conveys her character's relentlessness, then balances it with enough sweetness to make Ruth seem entirely human. The role earned Spacek her 6th Oscar nomination for Best Actress, making her the 8th performer in history to achieve that milestone. In 2002, she appeared in the Disney live-action film Tuck Everlasting and portrayed Zelda Fitzgerald in Showtime's Last Call. The following years saw her in varied roles, including an unfaithful wife in Rodrigo Garcia's 9 Lives and a woman battling Alzheimer's in the TV movie Pictures of Hollis Woods. Spacek also lent her voice to 2 classic narrations. In 2010's Get Low, Spacek delivered another memorable performance as a small-town widow with a complicated history with Robert Duvall's reclusive protagonist. The film, based on a true story, centers on a hermit who throws his own funeral while still alive. Throughout the late 2010s, Spacek took on several standout roles in television. She starred as the matriarch Sally Rayburn in Netflix's Bloodline, played Ruth Deaver in Hulu's Castle Rock, and portrayed Ellen Bergman in Amazon Prime's Homecoming. She also co-starred with Robert Redford in his penultimate film, The Old Man and the Gun, a biographical crime drama that was a hit with critics. In 2022, she joined Dustin Hoffman in Sam and Kate, Darren Lee Gallo's directorial debut, and starred alongside J.K. Simmons in the Amazon sci-fi series, Night Sky. The show allowed Spacek to bring her signature sense of wonder to a character who spends her nights gazing at the stars. Though the series was canceled after its first season, Sissy was undoubtedly the real star. Spacek and her husband, Jack Fisk, now split their time between their farm in Virginia and occasional stints in Hollywood. They recently transformed their property into an art space, converting barns into studios for painting and recording. She attributes much of her career success to her relationship with Fisk. He understands what my motivations are, and I understand his, and we always give each other the space to do what we love. Reflecting on her longevity in the industry, Spacek said, "I love those old 1940s movies where women like Barbara Stanwyck had these powerhouse roles. I thought, I want to be like those actors, and still be acting when I'm older. I knew I couldn't do everything. So I picked my roles carefully. I didn't want to burn out. I wanted to survive for the long haul, and here I am in my 8th decade, still doing it." Even in her earliest, eeriest roles, Spacek brought a luminous innocence to her characters. It's the same sense of purity and wonder that continues to shine in her recent performances. She gives a lot of credit to her cousin Rip Torn for offering her the advice that has guided her career. Rip told me, "If you're doing this because you love the work, you'll have a happy life." And he was right. That's about all for this episode. Why not check out our store where we have this very cool Shelley Duvall shirt available on the Hollywood Mystery Store. The link is down in the description. This is a fantastic way to help out the channel. Thanks to all our members and patrons. You all really make the difference. Until next week, sweet dreams.